Hello students. So today our lecture topic will be policy framework for nature based solutions. And in this we will discuss the role of governance, global standards and frameworks and the national level whatever initiatives are going on. The policy imperatives, let us have a discussion on that before we go into the governance and others. Indian urbanization is characterized by friction between grey infrastructure and blue green infrastructure like wetlands and forest. The goal is to move from the colonial master planning like basic services provision, sanitation and amenity focus to the ecosystem based adaptation, resilience focus. But the gap lies while engineering solutions exist, the implementation gap is often due to fragmented policy and lack of financial mechanism. Nature based solution definition we have already discussed a lot. Actions to protect, sustainably manage, and restore ecosystems that address societal challenges effectively. So, if we look at this governance, policy, and finance, we will be discussing adaptive governance, global standards and frameworks, statutory and legal frameworks, national policy architecture, mission modes. Within that, we will be discussing several things, including judicial governance and financial frameworks. The governance. First, I said that we will be discussing the adaptive governance, learning based urban resilience. Adaptive governance is a collaborative, flexible, and learning based approach to manage linked socio-ecological systems across scales, enabling responses to uncertainty and dynamic changes. The key features of urban nature based solutions are iterative learning we need, monitor outcomes, adjust strategies based on evidences. You don't have a fixed plans, then it will not be that successful. Multi-stakeholder collaborations, government, NGOs, residents, private sectors, knowledge holders, every different stakeholders need to come together. Polycentric governance, multiple authorities like ward, city, state, national, different scale, they have to work together, not siloed. We'll be discussing it more and more. Cross scale linkages, very important. Decisions at the neighborhood scale must consider city and landscape outcomes if possible. Transparent conflict resolution, mechanisms to manage trade offs among stakeholder priorities. Because that actually provides the sustainability of that nature based solution. Understanding cross scale effects, the mismatch is administrative skills and the ecological skills. They don't match. Ward or municipality, they don't follow the watershed or the basin outlines. The consequence of upstream actions like dumping waste somewhere is causing the downstream failures, flooding and pollution. They may be part of two different municipalities. But the problems are connected. That's the ecosystem. It's a connected problem. It doesn't really get controlled with the administrative boundaries. Regional planning authorities, they must align with ecological boundaries, not just administrative or political ones. Understanding these cross-scale effects are having implication for planning. The nature-based solutions, they have to be designed, and in those design, it must account for outcomes at multiple scales simultaneously. What succeeds locally may fail if scale up is ignored. 60 to 75% of nature based solution fails because of this scale mismatch between the governance and ecological processes. Now we continue the discussion on the cross scale again. The NBS outcomes cascade across scales. Ignoring these risks will be bringing the unintended consequences. Scale up effects. Like if we are designing a neighborhood park, not one, multiple, it can actually bring citywide cooling network, which we have discussed in the previous sections, previous lectures, where we discussed the patch matrix and the corridor. Tree planting, it can bring the watershed connectivity. We can utilize local livelihood projects for regional food security. Scale down effects like climate policy, NDCs, they can be also have a connect with the local adaptation pathway. Catchment management, household water availability. Catchment management can be connected or thought to the level of household water availability. Similarly, regional economics can be downscaled till the point of local employment. The cross boundary coordination, we can find that it is really working very nicely. River basin authorities, they have that. CWC has this accelerated irrigation benefits program that is now leveraging on NBS coordination. Early results show 35 to 50% improvement in the flood management. And this is the benefit of understanding these cross skill effects. Now, I will be discussing another very important point for this NBS application, that is global standards and frameworks. There is IUCN global standards, Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework GBF, and Sustainable Development Goals. IUCN global standard was required because it was the need felt like throughout the globe many different type of definitions for NBS is going on. So something which needs to be followed uniformly throughout the globe to tell that okay, this is nature based solution and not the conventional projects. For that only IUCN brought this 8 different criteria. We'll be discussing each criterion one by one. First one is addressing societal challenge. Any NBS must address a specific societal challenge, not just be a park or recreation, but it has to be maybe water security, disaster risk, something like that. Second criterion, design at appropriate scale. Design must be at scale, landscape or watershed scale, transcending administrative ward boundaries. This was only we were discussing at the cross scale impact. The third criterion, biodiversity net gain. Any NBS application shall result in a net gain for biodiversity using native flora and not ornamental monocultures. The fourth criterion, economic feasibility. NBS must be viable. Requires moving from capital expenditure to life cycle cost and understanding the operational cost. Fifth criterion, inclusive governance. Requires participation of local communities. Sixth, balanced trade-offs. Explicitly acknowledging conflicts, land for housing versus the land for floodplains, like these conflicts, and using policy to adjudicate them, not a subjective decision. Adaptive management criterion 7, policies for NBS must allow for flexible contracts that can adjust to changing ecological conditions. And the last criterion is the mainstreaming. NBS must be integrated into policy or regulatory frameworks, not remain as isolated pilots. This has to be a part and parcel of the master planning process as well. Now I will be discussing the next one, that is from the CBD, Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Adopted at CBD COP15 Biodiversity 2022, several decisions were taken, important decisions like targets 30-30, protect 30% of land and sea by 2030. Strong linkage with nature-based solution, ecosystem restoration and urban biodiversity. And this has a binding on national policy. Target 12 of this Kunming Montreal GBF, that has a urban focus, significantly increase the area, quality and connectivity of green and blue spaces in urban areas, it states. And what is the implication we can find of this in India? Moving biodiversity from the forest department to the town planning department and it mandates biodiversity inclusive urban planning. India's updated National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan (NBSA) NBSAP aligns with this, prioritizing spatial planning. Now we move to the SDGs. All of us probably we are very much acquainted with SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. There are also targets like 11.5, which talks about disaster impact, 11.6, reduce environmental impact. So again, NBS has a strong potential. Universal access to green spaces, social equity in NBS, that is 11.7. So, India's SDG index that Niti Aayog always monitors it, these are tracking. This index is tracking these, influencing state funding. So, that's a very strong integration we can find for the nature based solution. Now, we will be discussing the statutory and legal frameworks. The Biological Diversity Act 2002, this mandates biodiversity management committees at the urban local body levels. People biodiversity registers. Do you remember we discussed both the things, this BMCs and the PBS? PBS talks about the legal documentation of local bioresources and traditional knowledge, and this acts as the baseline data for any NBS intervention. And we have seen already the application of same in the cities like Panaji and Surat to document coastal and urban biodiversity for resilience planning. The next rule we'll be discussing, that is wetlands conservation and management rules of 2017, and these rules notified under the Environmental Protection Act 1986, and this particular rule has a very strong shift in the authority. Decentralized management it is advocating, which used to be managed by state wetland authorities. The key requirement under this particular rule is preparation of a digital inventory of wetlands. A wetland, if it is not in the list, then it is really legally vulnerable. Anyway, the wetlands are very vulnerable. Wise use principle, which allows sustainable human activities, traditional fisheries or agriculture, which is compatible with ecological integrity. Prohibitions are there under this rule, which ban the conversion for non-wetland uses, setting up of industries and solid waste dumping. But for all this, we need to have the wetland as a listed one. Town and Country Planning Acts at the state level, that is also taking care of this urban ecosystem. This particular urban planning is a state subject in India. State Town and Country Planning Acts govern the preparation of master plans or development plans, which are statutory instruments for land use. So these statutory instruments for land use or zoning, that is the master plans, they are having the residential, commercial, green or open spaces. Once notified, green zones are legally protected, at least in theory. Now we can discuss the very important guidelines which comes through the URDPFI 2014. The Urban and Regional Development Plans Formulations and Implementation Guidelines, which advises states on planning norms. These guidelines recommend eco-sensitive zones, that is identifying and protecting environmentally sensitive areas within city regions, buffer zones, creating green buffer zones. Immediately after the city boundary ends, we have to start the buffer zones for 2 kilometers. So 0 to 2 kilometer around cities to prevent sprawl and protect peri-urban ecology. Water bodies mandating buffers around rivers, lakes based on watershed principles rather than arbitrary distances. We will be discussing the Model Building Bylaws 2016, which serves as a guidance document for states to update their municipal building codes. In that, in chapter 10, we find the sustainability and green buildings. which introduces mandatory provision for rainwater harvesting, wastewater recycling, and solar roofing for buildings on plots above 100 square meter. For rainwater harvesting, Chapter 9 is devoting and it is providing detailed technical specifications, making it a prerequisite for obtaining an occupancy certificate. This operationalizing the decentralized components of NBS, and more of this will actually influence the matrix of that particular city as well. Catchment management at the plot levels will help to bring the difference to the city. UDCPR, this is from Maharashtra state. Unified Development Control and Promotion Regulations. Maharashtra's UDCPR provides a sophisticated example of how scope for NBS integration can be codified in building rules. Amenity space. Regulations mandate that for layouts larger than 20,000 square meter, 5% of the total area must be handed over to the planning authority as amenity space. Only our wish will be this will be used for the ecologically sensitive activities. Incentivization, landowners are compensated with floor space index or transferable development rights. I hope you are quite acquainted with both the terms FSI and TDR. These two effectively using the market mechanism to acquire land for public green infrastructure and makes it successful. This TDR for nature model helps overcome the high cost of land acquisitions in cities. And the last one we will be discussing, that is Environmental Impact Assessment Notification 2006. Recent amendments attempt to integrate environmental conditions with building permissions for large projects, 20,000 to 1,50,000 square meter. This EIA mandates creation of environmental cells within ULBs to monitor compliance. EIA often focuses on pollution control rather than ecosystem services. Integrating nature based solutions like soils instead of concrete drains into EIA conditions is the next frontier to achieve. Now we will be discussing the policy architecture, the missions, the mission mode. Governance in India is driven by centrally sponsored schemes, that's the missions. So we'll be discussing few of them which are having strong alliance with the nature-based solutions advocacy. National Action Plan on Climate Change NAPCC 2008. It is having several missions under it, like National Mission on Sustainable Habitat, which promotes energy efficiency and urban planning adaptation. National Water Mission's target of 20% improvement in water use efficiency, driving aquifer recharge, and Green India Mission allows for peri-urban afforestation. We can also find that alignment in the AMRUT also. AMRUT 1.0 to AMRUT 2.0 is a different mission program. So, Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation is the financial backbone of urban infrastructure development in India. Its evolution from phase 1 to phase 2 illustrates the policy shift towards the nature-based solution integration. The first one, as we know, it was having the focus on the basic services. Green component were there like parks and open spaces as amenities. And it has often resulted in manicured lawns rather than ecological processes and assets. Whereas Amrut 2.0 is actually talking about the water securities for the cities. Explicitly mandates rejuvenation of water bodies and aquifer management. It is valuing wetlands as infrastructure for water supply and not just for scenery. So, Amrut 2.0, which are now operationalizing the NBS, as we discussed already, it has a focus of water secure cities and circular economy of water. Water body rejuvenation, the guidelines explicitly mention the rejuvenation of water bodies to augment water supply and groundwater recharge. This is significantly policy maturity, valuing wetlands as infrastructure rather than just a scenario. Aquifer management, AMRUT 2.0, introduces shallow aquifer management as a pilot, recognizing the subterranean city. It mandates the preparation of city water balance plans to identify the gap between demand and supply, promoting nature based solutions, recharge pits, wetland restoration to close this gap. And incentive based reforms, we find 10% budget tied to reforms like recycle or reuse of treated wastewater, rejuvenation of water bodies, and this technology submission encourages startups in the water sector, opening the door for innovative bioremediation technologies. Smart cities mission on climate smart cities assessment framework, a competitive monitoring tool implemented by NIUA. We can see that urban planning, green cover, and biodiversity have been talked together. The indicators identified under the smart city missions are green cover. Cities are scored on the percentage of green cover. Urban biodiversity assesses if the city has a biodiversity management committee and a people's biodiversity register, which we discussed sometimes back. Permeability measures the extent of permeable surfaces to mitigate flooding. Nagar Van Yojana, urban forest scheme, launched in 2020. This scheme aims to develop 1,000 Nagar Vans by 2027. This utilizes the compensatory afforestation fund, which collects payments for forest diversion. This creates a direct financial link between industrial deforestation and urban afforestation. We will be discussing this scheme again under the financial one. A Nagarvan must be between 10 to 50 acres with a minimum of 66% tree cover. It emphasizes in situ conservation of local flora and prohibits monocultures, aligning with the IUCN criterion of biodiversity net gain. It mandates a collaborative approach involving the forest department, municipal corporations, and local NGOs, attempting to bridge the institutional silo between forest, which is a state subject, and cities, which is a local subject. Now we'll be discussing the judicial governance. Courts do not design nature-based solution, but they enable, mandate, safeguard, and hold authorities accountable so that nature-based solutions can get a chance to thrive. First one I'll be discussing under this is the public trust doctrine. The concept is resources like air, water, and forest are held by the state in trust for the public. They cannot be privately owned. There was a case as well. This doctrine is also applicable to artificial water bodies. In a recent judgment regarding Futala Lake in Nagpur, the Supreme Court expanded this doctrine to include artificial water bodies as well. The court ruled that even man made or artificially created natural objects fall within the ambit of this doctrine of public trust, thereby extending protection to the thousands of historic urban tanks in India that might not fit the strict scientific definition of a natural wetland. The precautionary principle, the Belandur Lake case, the National Green Tribune, they it was a forward foundation versus the state of Karnataka case. The ruling came from the NGT that applying the precautionary principle, this NGT extended the buffer zone to 75 meters for lakes and established specific buffers for primary 50 meters, secondary 35 meters, and tertiary 25 meters for storm water drains. This judgment asserted the supremacy of ecological boundaries over the administrative zoning. While it faced legal challenges, it forced the state to re-evaluate its encroachment policies and established a no construction zone precedent for urban water bodies, which is a great strong step. Ex post facto clearance. Can environmental clearance be granted after a project has damaged the environment? In Mumbai, the NGO Vanashakti successfully litigated to have mangroves on government land recognized as reserve forests, granting them protection under the rigorous Forest Conservation Act 1980. The Vanashakti judgment 2024, the Supreme Court struck down notification of the government allowing ex post facto clearance. So the ruling is something like this: कि environment law cannot countenance the idea of an ex post facto clearance. A recall of this judgment, late 2025, has reintroduced ambiguity, highlighting the tension between ease of doing business and NBS protection. It is always like a power tussle. And we will be discussing now a very important segment, that is the financial frameworks. Green municipal bonds, we discussed it earlier also, if you remember. A watershed moment in Indian municipal finance was issuance of green bonds. Ghaziabad Municipal Corporation 2021, Government of India provided 19.5 crore incentive, reducing the borrowing cost. Similarly, Indore Municipal Corporation in 2023 raised 244 crores, oversubscribed by 6 times, and demonstrates market appetite for green level municipal debt. These bonds, these green municipal bonds function under SEBI's regulation for green debt securities, which require third party verification to prevent greenwashing. The greenwashing which we were discussing in the previous lectures. Corporate Social Responsibility (CSR) Companies Act 2013. It mandates 2% of net profits for CSR. Schedule 7 explicitly lists ensuring environmental sustainability, ecological balance, protection of flora and fauna is one of the way to spend this CSR amount. Urban application, major source of funding for lake rejuvenation in Bengaluru and Chennai. It has already happened. But we have seen also the CSR funds are actually looking for the high visibility beautification, fencing, pathway, that type of projects, rather than deep ecological restorations where processes are being restored. Compensatory afforestation funding, which is CAMPAC, CAF, manages the funds collected from the user agencies, industries, miners for diverting forest lands. When forest land is diverted for industry, the user agency pays net present value, and the fund now holds over 50,000 crores. The Nagar Van Yojana, which I discussed just 10 minutes back, effectively unlocks this rural centric fund for urban forestry. By creating city forests, the state offsets carbon, utilizes idle camper funds, and improves urban air quality simultaneously. So, this is a very important tool. Barriers and challenges for this NBS integration. First one is the institutional fragmentation, siloization. Urban ecosystems do not respect administrative boundaries, we know that very well, yet governance is fractured. Like Bengaluru paradox, we have seen the lake water, minor irrigation department, catchment, town planning authority, pollution, state pollution control board, shoreline, municipal corporation. So you can find that in a lake, if you have to go for restoration, then so many different government uh, bodies are actually going to be partner to that problem. This institutional overlapping leads to a diffusion of responsibility, where no single agency is accountable for the holistic health of the ecosystem. In this case, is the lake. Capacity and land value conflicts. Capacity deficit is very common in our ULBs. Municipalities are stuffed by civil engineers trained in grey infrastructure, concrete pipes, etc. etc. Lack of urban ecologists or landscape architects in ULB cadres is becoming a major barrier for the NBS integration. Then again, land value conflict. High land value in cities are making amenity spaces expensive. Developers view greener open space as revenue loss. Encroachment of no development zones is rampant due to lack of valuation of ecosystem services and administration. The way forward is moving from the project to policy, to scale nature based solution from isolated pilots to city-wide infrastructure. Three critical shifts are required. First one is valuation. We must value the nature based solutions. We must integrate ecosystem service valuation into municipal accounting. A wetland must be valued not by its potential real estate price, but by the cost of stormwater drainage infrastructure it replaces and other co benefits. Capacity. We need a new cadre of urban ecologists within municipal corporations to design, tender, and manage green infrastructure with the same rigor applied to bridges and roads, any other infra. And in continuation, the third one is the integration. The artificial distinction between town planning, that is the land use part, and the environment, that is the conservation part, must be dissolved. Planning acts needs to be amended to make ecological performance, including permeability, biodiversity index, a mandatory parameter for development permissions, similar to the floor area ratio. In the world, many cities have already done that. Like Berlin, they have their Berlin biota factors. So, today's summary, we have discussed the governance, global standards and frameworks. We have discussed the national policy architecture, and we have discussed the judicial, financial, and we ended with the barriers and challenges, that discussion for the nature based solution integration. These are the references. Thank you.